Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. All right, my beautiful people. Well, welcome back to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I'm your host, Nyomi Banks, and today is Threshold Thursday. You know, that's powerful space where we stand at the edge of a breakthrough, ready to cross over into our creative freedom. Well, this week has been absolutely incredible, hasn't it? You know, on Monday, Dr. Will and I, we talked about creativity as our first form of identity. And on Tuesday, we dove deep into having creative courage and moving from fear to expression. While yesterday, Terry Wellens shared his wisdom about getting our stories out into the world and the reality of publishing journey. Well, today we're standing at another threshold, the one between creative blocks and creative flow. Between I can't and I'm going to try anyway. So before we get into this conversation, let's take a quick break, all right? It's your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks here on the Season of Self-Love podcast, and we'll be right back. Hey, it's your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks, and make sure you tune in every Thursday night to Ask Nyomi Bridging the Gap podcast, where we talk about everything from love, sex, relationship, cultural differences, and so much more. We're bridging the gap between them all, and we even talk about spiritual uplifting. You need to stop by. Me and Dr. Mike, as well as the BTG group. We have some amazing guests that come through. You never know. Just make sure you tune in Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Go to xnyomi.com and tell them Nyomi sent you. All right, my beautiful people, well, welcome back. All right, so before we get into this topic on Threshold Thursday here, let's kind of ground ourselves for this moment of possibilities, all right? So if you can find a comfortable position, and if it feels right for you to close your eyes, all right, let's all take a deep breath in together through our nose. Now exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing any creative frustration that you have been carrying. And now I want you to breathe in possibilities and breathe out limitations. Now I want you to imagine a wall in front of you. And this wall represents every creative block that you've ever faced. Every I'm not good enough. Every who am I to create. Every I don't have time, or I don't have talent. And I want you to see this wall clearly. Notice it. It's not made of concrete. It's made of old thoughts. It's made of old beliefs, old fears, and you. You have everything you need to walk straight through that wall. Now I want you to feel the creative energy flowing through your body like a warm golden light. As this light dissolves barriers around you, it melts resistance and it opens pathways. Now I want you to watch as you step through the wall of your limitation into a space of infinity of creativity, possibility, of infinite. I want you to feel how the light you are. Feel how light you are on the other side. And I want you to feel how free you are. Now I want you to place your hand on your heart, and I want you to repeat after me. I am a creative being. My blocks are temporary. My creativity is eternal. I give myself permission to create imperfectly and joyfully. Now take one more deep breath in, feeling very grateful for your creative spirit. And when you are ready, open your eyes. All right, my beautiful people, if you are new here to the Season of Self-Love podcast, we do a nice little meditation, guided meditation, right before we get into the topic at hand, just to help prepare us for whatever the conversation is. And today we're talking about breaking through our creative blocks. First, I want to talk about understanding creative blocks. This is something that every creative person faces. Those moments when we feel stuck, when the ideas won't flow, when we sit down to create and there's nothing. Or worse, we don't even sit down to create because we've convinced ourselves that there's no point. Now, I'm here to tell you that creative blocks are real. They've been real for me, but they're not permanent. And understanding what's really behind them is the first step to breaking through. You know, as I'm reflecting on our conversation with Dr. Will on Monday, something he said really stuck with me. He talked about how creativity is our first form of identity, right? And how we learn who we are through creating. But then he also talked about those 5 layers: intention, option, limitations, opportunity, self-concept, and healing as a lifestyle. You know, I realized that creative blocks often happen when one or more of these layers get clouded or confused. So let's talk about some real sources of creative blocks. I'm going to share them with you. One, let's unclear the intention. Unclear intention. Because we're going to keep it real, right? Sometimes when we're blocked because we don't actually know why we want to create. Are we creating for joy? Are we creating for validation? Are we creating to prove something? Are we creating to heal something? Or are we creating to serve others? As I shared with you on Tuesday, I remember when I first started Season of Self-Love podcast, I was so focused on being perfect and not stumbling over words or sounding professional that I almost didn't start it at all. My true intentions, they were clouded with the performance anxiety. I couldn't even say anxiety. You see that? Instead of being clear about my purpose. And that was to share my healing journey and to help others find their way back to self-love, or better yet, to what self-love is for them. And when Terry talked about yesterday about authors who sustain long careers by being the ones who write because they have something to say and not because they want to be famous. That's about having clear intentions. And then the next one is limiting thinking about options. How many times have we told ourselves, I can't write because I'm not a real writer? Or I can't make art because I don't have formal training. You know, Dr. Will says something beautiful about not limiting ourselves when we're being creative, but we do it all the time. We think that there's only one way to be creative, one standard of good enough, one path to expressions. But creativity is like Dr. Will's paintbrush. Like his paintbrush catalog is as sometimes you're finger painting first. And then sometimes you use a small brush. And then sometimes you use a big brush. And then sometimes you go back to the finger painting. The thing is, there is no wrong way. And the next one is the perfectionism masquerading as standards. This is a big one, y'all. This is when we tell ourselves that we're maintaining high standards, but really we just scared to be seen as imperfect. Ain't that something? Perfectionism masquerading as standards. You know, I shared on Tuesday about how I almost didn't start my podcast because I was worried about mispronouncing words, about my Chicago twang, and about not being perfect enough. But you know what? That imperfection is a part of my authentic voice. It's a part of what makes my creativity mine. You know, Terry mentioned yesterday that even successful authors get rejected. Remember, I told you he shared the Chicken Soup for the Soul was rejected 160 times. If they had let perfectionism stop them after rejection 50 or 100 times, we never would have had that book. And then let's talk about comparison and competition. I don't really want to get deep into that, but social media has made this one of the worst, hasn't it? I don't want to put complete blame on it, but it has heightened it. You see, we see everyone else's highlighted reels and we think our behind the scenes isn't good enough. But here's what I learned. There's room for everyone's voice. There's room for everyone's art. And there's room for everyone's story. The world doesn't need another Beyonce, but it needs the first you. I remember telling my daughter this, my middle baby. My middle baby she is so talented in so many different ways. She can sing. She taught herself how to play the piano and a guitar by ear. My oldest one plays the drums. Taught herself how to play drums by ear. Just do, 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 do. My oldest one wasn't scared to show her raw talent. The problem with my oldest child, she didn't ever want to try to outshine anyone, so she'll hold herself back. That was my oldest one. My middle baby, she wanted to be so perfect and was looking for validation. She has an amazing voice. Her pen game is amazing. Right now, she has 2 amazing songs out right now. And I asked her, can I share it? She don't want me to share with anybody. She don't even share. She does it. And put it out and that's it. But then when I look at her, she's 23. And so I have to remember she's trying to find her own voice amongst this world of chaos. But in the midst of her trying to find her voice in all this chaos, I said, don't forget to speak your voice while you're trying to find it. It's okay to share your creativity while you're trying to find your voice. Because understand, where everyone started at is not where they began. Trust and believe, Beyonce didn't start where she at right now. She did not. She did not. But as you continue to grow, you continue to do, you continue to start. And the more things that you see, the more things you want to correct, the more things you want to align to what your gifts are. And then it can create what your voice is supposed to be. That's just like this, with the season of self-love. It asks Nyomi bridging the gap and even elevate me self-discovery as I continue to create and mold new programs, new framework, new exercises, new tools. Everything is going to create an amazing voice of healing, of self-discovery, of self-love that people are going to be able to read about, going to be able to fill out workbooks that I've created. So even though I started from there with good morning, good evening, good night, to how my interest, hey, good morning, my beautiful people, it's your girl, to however it's going to be in the future, I'm still developing what my voice is going to be. So right now in this season, this is my voice. I don't know what my voice is going to be in my next season. But also, as I said on Tuesday about Janet Jackson influencing Beyonce, and Beyonce was influenced, well, Janet Jackson influenced Beyonce. Michael Jackson influenced Janet Jackson. James Brown influenced Michael Jackson. But each one of them brought something unique. I remember back in the day, I was younger, I used to ask a whole lot of questions. They used to call me, first of all, was Dear Abby, because I used to always give people advice. But then I don't know, it's probably telling my true age, I have no problem with that, but Jenny Jones and Ricky Lake. Because I will be asking people a whole bunch of questions. I wanted to know about people. I wanted to know their story. And then people say, well, who do you look to be now? And I want to be, something like Oprah. But no, I'm good with being Nyomi. But I can't lie and say those people influenced me. Ayana Benzet, how am I saying that? Influenced me. I loved how every week she go in and she fix someone's life. I love her technique in what she do. And there's several other people who, I look at and say, oh, they have an amazing way of speaking their language to their village. But I no longer compare myself. And there's no longer any competition. Like I said, I can look at to inspire. They inspire me. And next one is fear of judgment and rejection. That was one of the things that I got in the beginning as well. But this might be one of the deepest blockage of all. When we're scared when people won't like what we create. We're scared that they'll criticize us, reject us, or laugh at us. Or as I said week before last, they won't use their words impeccably. They'll come up under your comments and say all kind of stuff. But you know what? This is where you start to use your 4 agreements. You can't take it personal. No. You can't. And I'm about to say, but you can assume that it's so, there's something going on with them. They ain't talking about me. But no, on a real, this is where you can begin to use one of them 4 agreements. Even in your response, or just not respond at all. Again, some people might not like what you create. Some people might not understand it. Some people might even criticize it, and that's okay. Because it's not about you. It's about them. They don't understand. I understand what I said, but they don't. And then there's people in there that do understand. And this is what I say. It wasn't for you to understand. Because if you understand, if you know, then you know. You see, the people who need what you have to offer will find it. They will find it. The people who don't need it will move on. Both responses are valid. Neither one determines your worth or the value of your creativity. That is what I've learned. That is what I learned. I believe that's what I appreciate too. I appreciate the quality over the quantity. And if I don't get, a sponsorship because my numbers are low or followers or anything like that, that's good. If you don't believe in what I'm saying, then that's fine. That your product is not for me. Your sponsorship is not for me. And when I got into it in the beginning, that's what I was thinking on how I was going to create money to flow in here. But what I'm learning right now is be patient. Be patient. Because when it's time for you to grow, you're going to be ready to receive it all. And whatever it's going to align with you. So how can we break through the blocks? As I mentioned before, when I started the season of self-love, I began my show with good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for like the first 60 episodes. That was my finger painting phase. Now I got my small brush. And one day I will have my big brush. But I had to start somewhere. And remember when I talked to you and I told y'all the other day about Dr. Will talking about the why. He spoke about the why on Monday. I had to realize my why. And I knew what my why was because I had been sitting at my altar for 2 years before I even thought about doing the Season of Self-Love podcast. So I already knew what my why was. And so for me, by knowing what my why is and understanding it, that helped me to go ahead and start. I've already been out there. And this is another thing that I did. I created an audience of one. Sometimes the block comes from trying to please everyone. So instead, I created it for one person. And honestly, it was for my younger self. I created, when I thought about it, I created for something that I needed, that 7, 8-year-old baby that thought she was abandoned. Or that 12 or 13-year-old that maybe was teased because they didn't have the newest clothes. Or maybe that 15 or 16-year-old, the teacher told her that she was that dot outside of that circle. Or when that boyfriend or that man left you. So I had to think about that person. I had to think about me and that aspect of me speaking to them, to that. That was my audience of one. I didn't know who was on the other end listening. I didn't know how many it was. It could have been crickets. I didn't know. You see, when I create these episodes, I often think about that person who needs to hear that they're worthy of love, that their story matters, that they can heal and transform. The clarity helps me push through any creative resistance. But also what I learned through this too is that a lot of times in those cloudy moments when I can't create, sometimes that's moments of me to slow down and check myself. Because sometimes I probably have lifted a mask up and I'm not being my authentic self, which honestly has showed up on this podcast a few times. Remember back in October when I was doing a whole series on balancing life, living the life balance, and I was living with vertigo because I was just doing too much. I wasn't aligned. And then I had to come back and tell y'all what was going on. And I knew because I had a whole workbook that I was doing and I couldn't even finish it. You know why? Because I feel like I was performing. How can I talk about something that I didn't do? And I'm going to tell you this, we really is there, okay, I'm not going to do no more ebooks, no more workbooks until this is what I'm living. So if I'm feeling something on that day, But also, it's about embracing the learning process of it all as well. Remember what Dr. Will said about learning lessons versus living lessons? So when we're blocked, we often stuck in the learning phase, focus on getting it right instead of just getting it done. So living through the lessons, okay, I learned this, let me go try this out for myself. And if it works, hell yeah. If it don't, okay, let me go back, let me tweak it a little bit, let me try it again. That's the difference between learning lessons versus living lessons. And want to give yourself permission to be bad at something while learning it. That's what we mean by that. Dr. Will said it's actually more fun when you're bad at it. Because the joy is in the process and not just the outcome. This whole thing that I'm doing with self-love, with the retreats, with all of that, with the ebooks, with the e-course, with the apps, with all of that. This process is so much joy for me. Because it's truly full circle for me. Just remembering as a little girl telling my mother that I wanted to change the world. And even if I have been able to change one person's perspective of themselves, where they can be a ripple for somebody else good in their life, if they can be good and transform that to someone else and show someone else that I've not only changed one life, I changed multiple of lives. I was able to assist in their change because I can't change nobody, but I can assist and inspire and encourage in that change. Another way to get through the block is just set up systems, not just goals. Reading Bob Proctor's book, Change Your Life, Change Your Paradigm, is something that he says in there about goals. Goals is not a destination. Goals is about growth. And that was the first time that I ever heard that. And that changed my perspective on when I look at my goals. Because those goals are showing that I'm growing, that there's growth that happened for me. So instead of me looking at other people, other things and say, I want to do this, I start to create different systems. So I write my outlines. Yeah, I write outlines. I write notes. I break down everything from what my seminars are going to look like, all their different names. And then what my elevate me self, what those buildings are going to look like. I printed them out and they're hanging on my wall throughout my house. So when I walk down, I see it. I see it visually there already. And so I already know what I'm going to do, what's going to happen, you know? So let's talk about the power of the community. One thing that's really stood out for me from this week's conversation is how important it is to surround yourself with supportive and creative people. Dr. Will talked about not liking to be around non-creative people because the language is different. And I felt that. I felt that in my soul, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. When you're around people who understands the creative process, who encourage the experimentation, who celebrates growth over perfection, that energy lifts you over blocks. When there is somebody who is going to applaud you for your effort and not look at it as something wrong, especially if they ain't never did it before. You know, I shared a story about Dr. Will in the retreat and how both of us had the same idea, but I was stuck in planning mode while he was taking action. Sometimes we need people who will nudge us forward, who will create opportunities for us to step into. And I remember, and I don't think I shared this with you all, that morning after just thinking about it put chills in me, because that morning at the altar, I remember praying that God was to align me with a community of people who allow me to have my own voice, to accept me for who I am in this season of me. And that I don't have to keep going back to where I don't feel comfortable anymore. Just because I lived my life and was successful in that form, that's not where I'm at anymore. So I want to be surrounded with people. I want opportunities for that. And less than 6 hours later, literally, I'm sharing this with Dr. Will. Dr. Will said, am I already doing that? I was just waiting until I get everything together to ask you if you want to be a part of it. I knew right then again, my prayers were answered. But that's because I've been doing the work. I've been surrounding myself with positive people. So if you want to find your community of people, then join a writing group. Take that art class. Connect with other podcasters. Surround yourself with people who are also choosing courage over comfort. The thing is, when I look back, I used to be networking my butt off. When I was back in Chicago, I used to travel with my modeling bag. In my modeling bag, it used to have me 3 pair of heels, some clear heels, some black heels, and some white heels. And I had some red heels too. And I would have undergarments in there and, makeup and stuff, just in case my agent was to call me on a fashion show, or if I had to go to a go-see, or if there was a meet and greet somewhere, a networking event. So, because I work downtown and I'll go straight to wherever it was at right after work. So I was always networking. Even when I moved to California, even a part of the adult industry, I was at every convention. I had my notebook paper, my notebook, writing notes, because I was creating my production company. So I wanted to know the newest techniques and everything. But then once I left the industry and I really went into my self-love journey and really finding myself and going through the healing process, I kind of lost that. And so as I was telling my good girlfriend, Vanessa, earlier this year, is that I'm going to go back out and do networking, because it was hard for me to show up in this season in public, in front of the world. And I share with you, the audience, and if you're new here, when I went back to AVN, I went back as a whole different person. I mean, I was still Nyomi, but it felt so different. And I was good with that because I showed up truly as my authentic self. And I will go back, not to perform or nothing like that, but just to be around those people. And then if anybody need any enlightening words or anything like that, I'm there. But as you know, it's also something else when I think about a creative blockage. Sometimes it blocks spaces that you are not supposed to be in. And those blockages are actually guidance. Yeah. Like maybe you're stuck on a novel because you're not ready to tell your story yet. Or maybe you blocked on that business idea because there's something else that needs to be learned first. And maybe the resistance is pointing you towards a different form of expression. Because like I shared with you the other day about me doing the first retreat or seminar, I didn't call it a retreat, but like a little seminar I had, healing through spirituality and sexuality. It was only about 10 to 20 people there. And I was bummed. My feelings was hurt. But I was like, okay, the next time I'm going to really come out swinging. But I needed to see that. But also it wasn't the time because I still had so much growing to do. So much growing to do. But not only that, but I need a team, a qualified team that is around me. A qualified team that's going to work next to me. It can't just be 3 of us doing everything. I needed those that are equipped to do all of those things and not people just doing favors. I thank you for the favors. But it wasn't my time then. But that's how I know it's my time now. And I take that. So let's talk about the creative threshold moment, all right? How your creative threshold moment would look like. So right now in this moment, you're standing at the threshold. On one side is the familiar territory of creative blocks, excuses, and someday I'll on the other side. Okay, now on the other side is the territory of creative action, imperfect expressions, and I'm going to try this today. What is one small creative action that you can take today? You're at that threshold. And I want you to ask yourself, what's one small creative action that you can take today? Not a perfect action, not a groundbreaking action, just a creative action. Could you write one paragraph? Could you sing one song in your car? Can you take one photo? It could be, can you dance for one song? Draw for 10 minutes, record one voice memo of idea. Just start. Just start. Because the threshold isn't between amateur and professional. It's between creating and not creating. That's the threshold. Between expressing and staying silent. Between honoring your creative spirit or ignoring it. That's what the thresholds look like. All right, my beautiful people. As we close out today's episode, I want you to remember that every creator that you admired has faced blocks. Every one of them. Every artist, every writer, every musician, every entrepreneur has said in that space of, I can't do this, or I am not good enough. And if they said they didn't, they lying. And I'm just saying it. The difference between those who create and those who don't, it isn't about talents or resources or a perfect circumstances. It's about the willingness to create anyway, to start before you're ready, to be imperfect in public, to let your creativity matter more than your fear. So tomorrow, for our Freedom Friday, we're going to celebrate what happens when we break through those blocks and step into our creative freedom. We're going to talk about the joy, the fulfillment, and the ripple effects of authentic creative expressions. But today, I got a little assignment for you, and it's simple. I want you to identify one block that has been keeping you from creating and take one small action to move through it. Not around it, not over it, but through it. Because on the other side of that block is not perfection. It's freedom. The freedom to create, to express, to share your unique gifts with the world. And the world needs to have what you have to offer. It really does. All right, my beautiful people, I love you all. I see you all. And I believe in your creative courage. So until tomorrow, my beautiful people, have an amazing, amazing rest of your day. Have a good one. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today and remember, you are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer.